So now we'll talk about hormones and fibroids. So fibroids are estrogen dependent. And the main reason people talk about it this way is because no fibroids are found in prepubescent girls, and there are few fibroids that are symptomatic in postmenopausal women. Basically, if you can make it to menopause, you're going to be okay. Most people in menopause, after menopause, don't need intervention. The other reason that fibroids are thought of as being estrogen-dependent tumors is because these tumors regress with gonadotrophin-releasing hormone agonists, and so that means that it's working on the endocrine system in the brain. And the last reason why they're thought of as being related to estrogen is because the low-dose oral birth control is protective against fibroids. It's interesting to note that plasma estrogen, the estrogen in your blood, is actually not increased if you have fibroids. The ovarian production of estrogen is not elevated in women with fibroids when compared to women without fibroids. What's happening is that the fibroids themselves become these little manufacturing units of estrogen that promotes the proliferation. Progesterone is also related to fibroids. So in general, when we think of estrogen, we think estrogen proliferates, it causes growth, and progesterone maintains that growth, it holds it. And so we need both of those things to work together, progesterone and estrogen, in order to have a baby, for instance, in order for the endometrium to be thick, so you can have a baby. Progesterone has two receptors, A and B, that are more highly expressed in the fibroid than in the myometrium. So that means that the receptors for progesterone there are more of them in fibroids than in the muscle of the uterus. So what's happening is that estrogen promotes or induces the estrogen receptor expression. And that in turn is what induces fibroid growth. Interestingly enough, fibroids can grow in postmenopausal women who are on an estrogen and progestin hormone replacement therapy. Progestin is the artificial progesterone. And of course, in a hormone replacement therapy, you're going to have an artificial estrogen. However, these postmenopausal women are not at risk of fibroids if they are only on estrogen postmenopausally. Also of interest about progesterone and fibroids is that if a progesterone receptor antagonist is introduced, fibroid proliferation will be prevented. That means the progesterone receptor is blocked, and so progesterone can't be active to hold that growth. So what we have, this is that factory inside of the fibroids. So we have to start with an overexpression of aromatase and an overexpression of type 1 17 beta HSD. These are the enzymes that promote estradiol, which is the strong estrogen. And so that causes an increased local estrogen level, and that can cause an increase in the estrogen receptor G and the progesterone receptor, and a decrease in the P53, which is a tumor suppressor gene. So you have a decrease in that, and so that will lead to more proliferation. When you have that higher increase of estrogen in the fibroid, it will also promote overexpression of the estrogen receptor alpha. So remember that anything, in order to do its job, has to be in a receptor. If it's just floating around, it can't do its job. So the more receptors you have that are open and available, the more possibility it is for that thing to do its job. So a higher local estrogen level in the fibroid activates overexpression of estrogen receptor alpha, and also overexpression of estrogen receptor alpha is caused by hypomethylation of the estrogen receptor promoter. And so what that means, hypomethylation, is that we're not getting enough methylation, and that will cause overexpression of estrogen receptor alpha. So let's look here at the metabolic pathway for estrogen. So here, everything starts with cholesterol, and it'll be broken down into DHEA, and then possibly it has to make a choice here. It's going to be broken down into a precursor for testosterone, androstenediol. That will then be broken down into testosterone, which can be broken down into estradiol. DHEA can also be broken down into a different testosterone precursor called androstenedione. It's so hard to say. And that also can be broken down into a weak estrogen called estrone. So remember how we were talking about fibroids are promoted with upregulation of aromatase. So here, testosterone is broken down into estradiol via aromatase, and androstenedione is broken down by aromatase into estrone. So both of these aromatase are upregulated. So we're having faster movement down into the estrogens. The other thing that is sped up is this 17 beta HSD1. And so we're getting increased movement from DHEA to androstenediol down to testosterone, very fast into estradiol, the strong estrogen. And we're also having not only fast conversion from androstenedione to estrone, but then estrone predominantly converts to estradiol when you have that 17 beta HSD1 SNP or speed up. So everything is kind of hammering this strong estrogen, estradiol. So the first thing that we're going to look at is this aromatase again. So what we see is that the aromatase RNA is not found in the myometrium or the muscle of the uterus in women who do not have fibroids. In women with fibroids, they do have the aromatase RNA. Aromatase is higher in fibroids than in adjacent myometrium. So again, we're talking about the fibroids themselves being a little factory for creating growth. So here again, we see the aromatase that's pulling down the androstenedione and the testosterone into estradiol and estrone. Another thing we see is that the 17 beta hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase type 1 is higher in fibroids than adjacent myometrium. And so here we see that to convert the estrone into estradiol, so the weak estrogen into the strong estrogen, we're using the pathway of 17 beta HSD1. So this is a faster a faster conversion. So you're pushing towards estradiol, because to convert back from estradiol to estrone, you're using the type 2, which is not upregulated. And so we have upregulation of estrone to estradiol conversion in fibroids. And like I mentioned before, it's not only the 17 beta HSD1 is not only active in converting the estrone to estradiol, it's also active in converting the DHEA to androstenediol. And so that's pushing the strong pathway, which ultimately leads to estradiol. And then finally, fibroids have higher estrogen levels than the adjacent myometrium. And we saw before that also fibroids have higher estrogen levels in the plasma. We don't expect to find high estrogen levels in the plasma of women with fibroids.